Well, that song was a little short. Usually I have to fade them out myself, but that time I forgot. It was a little short. Hello, our users. My name is John Kulas. I'm a 20-year professor of industrial and organizational psychology, 12-year user of R for normal, boring, statistical and analytical operations. But about a year or two into my using R, I really kind of got sold on it because it it became known to me that you can not only do your analyses within your analytical environment, but you can craft entire projects. At the time, for me, it was papers. You can write an entire APA, American Psychological Association, formatted paper using the same environment that you're doing your analyses in. And for me, that was just kind of mind blowing. And so that was a big reason that I took to R. And while I'm still a big R advocate and R user, today that ability has kind of evolved independently of R, the language. And so at this point, it doesn't matter if you're using R, using Python. Julia is kind of the possibly the next generation language that's coming up and becoming a little more popular. You can use whatever language you want because the software doesn't care, it doesn't mind. Um, but I'm here every week promoting this way of structuring your work, and with the thought that maybe we can build a little community of people that are promoting this. I'm a psychologist, I mentioned. This has not been a way of structuring your work that has taken my field by storm. There's little pockets of people that do it, and you, if you're watching this, you're probably doing it as well, and that's awesome. But I think part of the reason is it's just not well known that this is a capability that you can do within R or Python or whatever your analytical preference is. And that's why we're here every week is to be one little cog in the big machinery that is the world of work. And we're trying to say, hey, this is out there and this is possible. And not only is it possible, but if you're doing analytical stuff and you have to summarize it with narrative, which is almost universally the case, maybe you should consider doing everything within that same environment. It minimizes error. A big thing that I focus on in my field, and not just me, but other industrial and organizational psychologists. A big focus of our work is error, and this is just no-brainer way of structuring your work. If you're a data scientist or if you're working with analytical things, there's really I can't think of too many reasons other than the obstacle of learning, which seems to be the major obstacle here. It's sometimes said that there's a steep learning curve with R. I would say it's certainly not as steep using these processes that we're talking about. And as a matter of fact, if you embed everything that you're doing in R within the broader context of your project, I would probably argue I don't have empirical evidence for this. I don't have support for this, which is dangerous. As someone in my background, you're supposed to always have supporting evidence when you're making a claim. But I'm going to make the claim anyway. I'm pretty sure that you're going to learn R better if you force yourself to execute your entire project using these processes. So enough of the soapbox. That's why I'm here, and that's why I'll be here every week. Every Tuesday, we'll probably stay on Tuesday for a while. I don't foresee any kind of interference with things that I have going on that are going to be on Tuesday evenings. So we'll stay Tuesday at 7 o'clock Eastern, and I hang out for about an hour. And the reason I hang out for about an hour is we're using this metaphor of an academic office hour. And that just means the thought is I'm here, I'm available. If there's someone out there interested in this stuff and you just want someone to bounce some ideas off of, or you just want to know that there are other people out here doing this for kind of some social support, I'll be here for an hour, and whatever you're interested in goes. So you can drop a comment and say, hey, I want to do this, or I'm interested in looking at this, and we'll do it. We can pivot and do it. That's why on the agenda there's always this concept of shared problem solving. In the absence of that actually happening, what we've been doing is, and the way we've been structuring most of these weekly sessions, it's funny, this is not at all what I kind of envisioned when we first started doing these, but that's fine. You got to kind of pivot and go with what life takes you. So, what we've been doing is we've been checking out just kind of focused features and capabilities of using your analytical environment to script your entire project within. We've been looking at little focused things that you can do, little capabilities. So for example, if I'm writing something and I want it to be in a particular format, MLA format or APA format, those are the kind of the two academic formats. How do I do that? If I want to create a bibliography using these methods, how do I do that? So we've been looking at just those sorts of features. Tonight, tonight's feature that we're going to take a look at is related to and sprang directly from last week's investigation, and that is we're going to take a look at the incorporation of icons into your project and one specific type of icon. So there are different repositories of icons that help kind of shift the look and feel of your documents. There's an icon right here. So these clinking glasses, that's taken from the Font Awesome library. So we're going to talk about accessing Font Awesome icons. Those aren't the only icons that are out there. I used to use these a lot. I don't really use them much anymore, and I'll probably show you the alternative that I currently prefer, but we will check out Font Awesome icons because there might be a reason for someone to want to use them and to access them. Okay, so every week, because we do these explorations in an open-ended, unscripted, exploratory manner, we will do a recap of the previous week at the beginning of each subsequent week. So before we get into Font Awesome icons, let's get into what happened last week.
Well, the peace and quiet of Frostbite Falls has been pretty well shattered these last few days. First, Colonel McCornpone, editor of the Picayune Intelligence, sponsored a treasure hunt to find a buried pot containing $1 million in Confederate money.
Plus a 1910 Stearns Knight Roadster reconditioned.
Then the good citizens of Frostbite Falls tried so hard to find the Picayune pot that they riddled the town with holes and tunnels.
Here's a spot where nobody's dug yet. Hey, where'd you come from?
I'm digging from the bottom up.
Next, a gang of bank robbers led by babyface Braunschweiger
Alias Boris Bedenow, folks.
took advantage of the hole-digging spree to burrow under the town bank in order to rob it. And finally, when Rocky and Bullwinkle tried to warn the bank, Bullwinkle said the wrong thing.
Hey, it's a stick-up!
And the bank guards immediately opened fire on our friends.
That was a very thorough recap. Unfortunately, it had nothing to do with what we did last week. Sometimes those Rocky and Bullwinkle recaps are more recap. The reason I do them as transitions is about half the time, maybe 40% of the time or so, the narrator will say going into it, "You'll remember last time," before they go into the recap. And so that's why we started doing it. And I'm going to continue doing it just because I've actually heard from a few of you that you kind of like the Rocky and Bullwinkle. So, so I appreciate that. Last week, what we were looking at were a couple of different ways to customize callouts. Now, callouts are built-in capabilities in Quarto documents. Quarto is the next generation piece of software that facilitates this authoring that we're doing. And by saying facilitate, what I mean is it helps us create things in what the Quarto developers refer to as publication ready documents. And really what we create are things that look publication ready. They're just slick, they're nice, they're clean. The formatting is consistent in terms of coloration. You can see kind of some of the same washing versus the bannering here. And these are the five default callout types that the software has kind of out of the box. There's a note, there's a warning, there's important, there's a tip, and there's a caution callout. And these all have their own icons associated with them. They all have their own default colors associated with them. Now you can change some of this, but not a lot. You can change all of it, but in terms of what the Quarto team has built into their product, they have a couple of customization options, but they're somewhat limited. So there was an existing callout extension. There was an existing extension that we wanted to check out last week, and that's called Custom Callout. Now, Custom Callout is located on GitHub, as a lot of these capabilities are. And so we've had several sessions on how to access them. So if you're interested in that, you can look at last week's session. Or again, if you stumble across this and we're still live, just drop a comment and we can pivot to that. We can actually walk through some extension installations. But the custom callout What it does is it mainly it's I would say its focus as someone that's not involved with the development. To me, the standout feature is it enables any icon to be displayed in this upper left hand corner of what I'm calling the banner. So the banner here where it says no 18, I just took that because we had one of the we I think we started doing one last week. Don't ask me why, but we did one. Just being goofy, I guess, and hoping to be entertaining in some at some level. We did that. But the specification of this custom callout is primarily within the YAML, the front matter of your documents. Now, these document types are identified by a three-letter extension QMD. Quarto markdown is, in my head, what that QMD kind of represents. And the front matter of those QMD files is going to be delineated by an opening three dashes and a closing three dashes. And then within those two fences exists what's called your YAML, or your front matter, your meta information about the document that you're creating. What type of document do you want to create? Do you want to create an HTML document, a PDF document? Are you interested in slides? What kind of font do you want? What are the margins? Do you want multiple columns, single columns? That kind of stuff typically goes in your YAML. Now, this capability, this custom callout capability, they're also saying, well, as long as you're doing all this other stuff in your YAML, why don't you also say what you want your callouts to look like if you would like them to be customized? And so you can pull icons from multiple places. One of the places you can pull them from is Font Awesome, which is how we got to tonight's topic. Now you define it in the YAML with indentations, and I'm defining what the callout is going to be identified here with a first level indentation, and then there's some kind of specific values that follow that. And so you see how I call it out here is within the Quarto specification of what are commonly referred to as fenced divs. And so this three colon, at least three colon to start, at least three colons to end, and then in curly brackets, this identification of the capability that you're interested in. This just simply says when you render, when you create something, I want you to follow these directions essentially. And that renders this callout that you actually see here on the right. So the main part that you're seeing is the icon, the title here, and then the banner is built into the capability itself. This picture that we have here, this picture, of course, we always do cartoons on this weekly thing, but so that's the cover off of an Ian Fleming novel, James Bond novel of For Your Eyes Only. So before it was a movie, it was actually a novel by Ian Fleming, and so that's what that picture is. If you follow the URL in this code chunk, you can reproduce or find that image. Now, one of the things that I had done a year or so ago, it's actually, there's a date on this older spec. What we had done collectively as a group here is we had in, when is this? August of 24, so almost 2 years ago now, my goodness. Almost 2 years ago now, we had created a way to also customize callouts, and we were focused not on icons, but we were focused on just images. And so what we also looked at last week was a callout, a customization process that I created with the help of AI, and that process is just a little bit different than the custom callout that focuses on icons. The callout PNG extension operates similarly in terms of what it's going to display, but it renders a little bit differently. And what we're focused on is not, sorry, I had to mute myself for a second there. What we're focused on is not icons, but we wanted to be a little broader and say, well, what if I want to introduce an image of any type on there? Now, those images can end up being essentially icons, which is what we have here, but it can be broader than that as well. And so the specification using this capability is a little different. There's no YAML specification. So at least my intent wasn't for people to specify this in their YAML, but rather to do it all within the fenced div itself. So with the custom callout, there's going to be less specification within the body of your document. Within the callout PNG specification, there's going to be more specificity within the body of your document. As a matter of fact, the entirety of the capability is going to be identified here. And so there's a title that's specified, the image in terms of what's displayed in the what I'm calling the banner here is going to be specified also by location and the actual file name. The color is going to uh, the color is going to be the banner itself, and then you can play. This is where the image call out customization differs a bit from the icon specification. Is with the images, there are two parameters in there where you, the user, can play with it in terms of making the image larger or smaller and making the padding around it larger or smaller. So that's what we did last week, was we took a look at those. In terms of comparing the two, the custom callout versus the callout PNG. First of all, I will say this. So the callout PNG was was my first attempt to create a Quarto extension, and I was probably more interested in just learning about the process of creating an extension than I was of creating this specific capability. Like, this was just something we had already done, and I was trying to see if we could do it, have it specified in a more elegant manner. And I think we did that. But the reason I mention this is because the codeless professor is someone who has done this before, and custom callout is just one of a few different capabilities that he's been focused on. So this is someone that has more experience, certainly, building these sorts of things than I do. And that matters when we're talking about these sorts of capabilities. I would say, all else being held constant, there's probably more likely to be a bug in mine than there is in his. So take that for what it's worth. Now, in terms of other comparisons, I will say that the custom callout is intended to accommodate primarily icons, but there's also Unicode characters, and we went over those a few weeks ago. But some of those Unicode characters include things like emojis and symbols and letters and things like that, letters from different alphabets and languages. But it also takes strings, and so strings are just characters. You can put letters, numbers, those sorts of things in the banner of your callout using custom callout. Callout PNG is different in that you can accommodate pretty much any image type. So it can be a JPEG, it can be a GIF, it can be a TIFF, it can be an SVG file, it can be a PNG, which is kind of the file types that I tend to pursue when I'm looking for images, because those are kind of notorious. Those are known as supporting transparency in the backgrounds, and that's kind of a feature that I'm looking for when I look at images. For example, if you look at this Johnny Bravo here, that's our logo for this week in terms of a footer or a link to the source material. I change that every week to be consistent with the theme, but I always look for a PNG such that it's a transparent background, so it shows whatever's in back of it. And so with our slide theme, you can see that there's a washout in the middle, and so the background of Johnny there changes relative to his position on the screen. So callout PNG can include any image type, including, here I'm putting an asterisk, including icons. So what I did on this callout PNG was I tried to replicate what we have here with this icon. And I did that through just finding an image of an icon, essentially. So when I say including icons, I'm really talking about images of icons, not icons directly. You are, using callout PNG, going to have to specify an actual image. So the extension has to be consistent with TIFF or JPEG or PNG or GIF. It will take a motion figure, so it can be a GIF. Now, the thing I really like about the custom callout is that it really does a great job of capturing those native to Quarto callouts. So just the appearance of those looks great. The other thing about custom callout is that with one of the user fields that the Quarto team has accommodated is they they allow you to generate three different types of callouts in terms of their appearance. There's a simple, there's a default, and there's something else. But so the appearance of them can be slightly different. And the custom callout extension, the Codeless Professors extension, completely mimics that. So you can do exactly what the Quarto callouts look like here. And also consistent with that, the color specification within custom callout, it's really referring to this left-hand border, and then it relatively washes that out for the banner. So the border is what you're specifying. The banner is washed out relative to that. In comparison with callout PNG, the color that you specify is going to be a solid background, and then the border is going to be rendered a little bit darker than that. So that to me, those are meaningful style differences. Again, the coatless professor, I would I would capitulate or say I would say that that is definitely more consistent with what you probably expect to see with a call out, just in terms of the default look. And then he also has a user parameter there of making those collapsible. And so collapsible just means, do I want to see the content immediately, or do I have to engage with the call out in order to see the content such that it expands? We talked about accordion, hiding things within an accordion 2 weeks ago, and that's all collapsible does, is it hides it within an accordion. Now the custom callout is going to be it's going to work fine within two main document types. Every week when we are focused on Quarto, we're talking about four different document types. We're talking about HTML documents, Reveal.js documents, typist documents, and PDF documents. Now there's a little confusion there because there's some overlap between HTML and Reveal.js. Reveal.js slides fundamentally are rendered as HTML specifications, and typist document types give you a PDF. So when we're talking about our four main document types, just keep in mind that there's not mutual exclusivity across those four different types. But if those are the four that we're focused on, which we always are, so the custom callout works well within the HTML and Reveal.js slides, whereas the callout PNG is intentionally active and works in all four of those types: HTML, Reveal.js, typist, and PDF. Now, this isn't any sort of hit on the custom callout. There is actually on the help page for this capability, it literally says, yeah, this isn't something we were interested in doing for typist and PDF, but if someone really wants it, maybe let us know and maybe we can do that. I guess the last thing I'll say here about this, and I don't mind dallying a little bit on this unless someone prompts me, just because I think tonight's topic is not going to it's not going to be that deep. so we can spend a little more time on this. The other thing about the callout PNG that is something that people should be aware of before they choose, if you're going to choose one or the other, is that the positioning of the title and the image itself is baked into the capability itself. So with the custom callout, the icon size is going to be universal, and the relation between, my understanding, at least as much as I've played with it, the relation between the icon and the title should look consistent across any icon that you use within this extension. Now, for the, whoops, sorry, I'm going to give everyone motion sickness here. Within the callout PNG, the location of the image and the title are going to be relative to the size of the size of the image that you want. Now you can change the size of the image, and you can change the size of the banner, the padding around it, the vertical padding. But the distance between the title and the image itself is going to be baked into the capability. So that's not something that we have in there as a user parameter. So you just kind of need to be aware. If I'm comparing the two different packages, that is definitely something that I want to be aware of. Okay. So that's two different ways to customize callouts. And of course, like everything else with these processes that we're talking about, those aren't the only two ways. Those are just two ways that I kind of stumbled across. So for tonight, what I thought we would do is kind of related to last week is one of the ways in which you can find an icon like this is you can go to a site called Font Awesome. And independent of the custom callout capability, there are other ways to get icons within your documents. And so what I thought we would do tonight is we would take a look at a Quarto extension that grabs Font Awesome icons and puts them in your documents. And then I thought we were just going to do that actually. So my initial thought for tonight was let's just do that. And then I started thinking and I'm like, wait a second. It's a Quarto extension, yes, but this is also a capability that I used to do quite frequently. And I used to do it quite frequently from outside of Quarto. So I used to do this when I was using the R markdown ecosystem more frequently and not so much Quarto, but I also used it with Quarto. And so we're going to check out both of those. And the reason that I don't even know this guy's name. Is it Squidly? Squidward Worm, Squidworm, something. I like, I like square, I like SpongeBob SquarePants. But he was kind of late for me in terms of, I think I was into my late teens or so by the time he came out. So I know memes and I know, like, what I've seen I think is funny, but I don't know all the characters. And Squidworm, I, I think. Anyway, the reason that this guy is there and he's looking a little skeptical is because after I revisited the R package that facilitates the introduction of font awesome icons into your document, I I was like, well, is this extension? The extension seems more limited. So let's see if that's the case or not. So to me, just looking at the extension and then revisiting the R package, I'm not sure that I want to use the extension, but we'll try it. We'll see. We'll check her out. So should have some hyperlinks on here. Again, please use my slides. I put them together with the intent that people might find them useful. I enjoy putting them together, but it's more enjoyable if I have the thought that people might be using them. So if you want to help me out, go ahead and use those. I don't get anything from it. It would just make me feel better about putting them together, and it might actually give me a little incentive to keep putting them together, because who knows? At some point, I'm going to stop. So what you see here as I'm kind of jumping around is I'm looking to see if I put in different hyperlinks because honestly, I don't remember. Uh, but it looks like I put the same hyperlink in multiple spots. So we may have to hunt around a little bit for the extension. And really what I was looking for was just the GitHub page that doesn't describe what this is as elaborately, but is more traditional in terms of more minimal kind of presentation of how to use it. But here what you're seeing on the hyperlink is you're actually seeing what it's intended to do. And it wants to access font awesome icons within your Quarto documents. And the way in which you do that is through shortcode. Now, shortcodes we also covered a few weeks ago, and I'm really liking this way of structuring things. I love the way that shortcodes are structured. I think it's kind of elegant and efficient, and so I'm really enjoying that. Now, let's see, this should be the GitHub page. So this is the page that I was wondering if we had a direct link to, and maybe tonight when we get off, I'll change one of those hyperlinks so it directly goes to this page. But this is kind of should be similar information, but it's tailored toward an audience that might be interested in just let's test it out right now. And so that's kind of why I wanted to get here. So first of all, let's check out Font Awesome and see what it is. So Font Awesome is a repository of icons that exists independent of R, Quarto, R Markdown, or anything like that. It's just out there. Anyone can access these. They probably copy and paste just fine into things like Word documents, I would imagine. There are free tiers, there are paid tiers as well. If we look at the icons themselves, there are 64,000. Now, I think if we were to search those just for free icons, it's probably going to be a it's going to be subset. It's going to be a subset of that. I'm not sure. There we go. So once we just get into the search window, we're seeing that number again, 64,000. If I filter that by free, it says there's a little over 2,000. So certainly, I would suspect, I don't know for sure, but I would suspect that some of the limited access ones are probably brands or associated with brands. Now, I used to use Font Awesome quite frequently. It was one of my kind of go-to places for icons. They are nice. They're formatted really nicely. They look great. Um, they tend to be monochromatic, so just one color, and it probably adds to the elegance. But the icons that I have been using exclusively over the course of the last year and a half or so are located within Iconify. And Iconify has everything that I need and want. And some of these icons that are within this repository have multicolor on them. And I kind of just like that visually. And so these are the icons that I tend to gravitate toward. But I have used Font Awesome icons in the past, and we're certainly going to use them tonight. You might find reason to use them in the future. So let's check those out, shall we? So I'm going to see if I can go back to the actual GitHub repository, and we're going to install the capability and then test drive it here. Now, one of the reasons I have the squid guy, what is his name? Let's just get this done with. Squid, SpongeBob, Squidworm, I thought. Squidward, word. Oh, he's got a last name. Did anyone know he's got a last name? I did not know that. Squidward yeah, I knew that. Squidward. Why did I think worm? Squid. What's going on here? Why does he look like? It's probably an interesting cartoon. I probably should watch it more frequently. Uh, this guy, I like his expressions. He looks like the kind of guy um, that I might actually get along with pretty well. Squidward. Squidward. All right, I'll try to remember that. The reason Squidward was on the slide was because there aren't a lot of user parameters here that at least are identified within the repository that contains the capability itself. There is some sizing, and that's great, but I would be more interested in color specification, and I know we can do color specification within the old R package system. So there's no formal acknowledgement of color control here, and so that's the main reason I don't know that I would be, even though I like the specification, I don't know that this is something that I'm going to use very frequently. But let's just check it out, shall we? So I'm going to copy the installation instructions here. I'm going to go into RStudio. Take a sip of water as I'm still kind of got my throat issues again. Every Tuesday at 7, come join Kulas and see his throat issues. How about that? And let's start let's not start a new project. I'm going to use the project that we created last week that was focused on callouts. And the reason I'm doing this is because I just have too many files all over my computer. Here you see the 2 extensions that contain the capabilities for callout, custom callout, and PNG callout. And so when we add this 3rd capability here, you'll see a 3rd folder appear in that folder space. So I'm going to right click and paste, and we're going to add that Font Awesome extension. Yes, we trust the authors. because we're very trustworthy. Yes, we'd like to continue. I know the change that you're going to make is just going to be to add a folder, and there it is. It just popped in. No, we don't need to see the documentation because actually I have a window open with the documentation in it. Okay, but we will, so we will create a new QMD, so I don't need to use old QMDs here. So let's create a new file, new Quarto document, and we'll just do an HTML document to start with. If you've been watching at all, you know that my recommendation is always to render the default template just to see that your system is set up such that you can view the finished product, which in this case is just going to be the boilerplate. Awesome, we'll call it awesome. The boilerplate default information. HTML file type should never give you, I shouldn't say that, but I would be surprised if there's going to be issues in rendering to an HTML on most people's local machines as long as you have Quarto installed. There it is, looks beautiful. Now let's see if we can get some icons in here. Now, the first thing that we can try is probably the first thing that many people would try, which would be to go to Font Awesome. And this works with Unicode characters now in Quarto documents. It was kind of hit or miss there for a long time in terms of whether you could do this or not. But let's actually just try to copy one of these. So I'm just going to copy an icon if I can. I think that's the copy. That might just give me the code to it though. I'm going to try to paste. Yeah, it's just giving me the image, which is interesting because that means if that is the image, and that means I could probably use that within Quarto. I could probably use that within the PNG. Let's try that. This is not what we thought we were going to do tonight, but because we already have a QMD here that has the image callout customization in it. Let's just check this out really quickly. This is something Kulas wanted to do. This is not something that anyone else asked for. I'm going to, in this last one that says this is a bigger Snoopy, I'm going to paste that URL to the Font Awesome icon. Yeah, okay, it doesn't come up. So it's probably behind a paywall. So that's not entirely surprising, but I was curious just to see if maybe we could access it. Okay, so these types of icons are not going to be easy to just copy and paste directly into a document, but that's okay because we have a capability now, and that capability is the shortcode. And the shortcode, I should have let me get two windows open here. So I just want to make sure that we don't need to activate the shortcode within the YAML of our QMD, which sometimes you need to. It looks to me like you don't. So it looks to me like you can just add the extension and then use the shortcode. So let's use their default here, and we'll just put it in. The shortcode scripting structure is just curly bracket, angle bracket, and then the shortcode activation, which in this case is just FA, and then some values. So let's see what this renders. There it is. Okay. So that's pretty easy. We can get the GitHub image on there. The one we were looking at was not GitHub. We were looking at a crown. So let's see if we can get the crown in there. You know, the one thing about these icon sites is they're not the easiest to navigate. Now this is also in brands, so we might have to do another brands specification, and then that says Web Awesome. So let's try this. Let's see if we can get Web Awesome in there without doing a lot of investigation in terms of how we need to script this. There it is. Okay. Now you see it's rendering in a specific color. Within the package, within the shortcode itself, I don't see any sort of intention in terms of the way in which this is rendered. There is, however, a size specification. So let's see if we can affect the size. So the size looks like there's a couple of different ways to do it. We can do it literally, we can do it relative, and then there's LaTeX, which is going to be important um, when we do PDFs. Now you can also give it a title. This is going to probably be most important for this is probably going to be most important for HTML file types, and that will probably be activated upon hover, I'm guessing. So we'll give the GitHub image a title, and let's call it an envelope. Even though it's not an envelope, we'll just call it an envelope. Yeah, so now upon hover, when I hover over that, I actually get some meta information about it, so we could call it an antelope if we wanted to. How do you spell antelope? That looks right, but I'd be more comfortable with an image. That's an antelope now. Okay. So let's play with size. Let's see if we can affect the size. I am not, oh, here we go. Size equals. That's easy enough. So there's literal and there's relative. Either way, uh, either way should work in an HTML file. So let's see if we can get double our GitHub image with an antelope here. Yeah, that looks quite nice. And again, one of the things about these font awesome icons is they, you know, they maintain their integrity upon different sizings. So you aren't going to get any blurriness with specifying these this way uh, in terms of how they actually look. Let's see how big we can go here. So it says 32. 2M is not that big actually. So 2M is twice the size of original magnification. So that might actually, why does it say FA? Did I grab that from some weird place? It doesn't look right. Oh, you know what? I I think this I think the help page here in terms of the way to size it is using a little bit of the font awesome outside of Quarto specification. That's what it looks like to me. So we'll see if we can get this really big. Uh, maybe we'll just leave GitHub as it is, and we'll see if we can size. See if we can size that crown, and then we'll try it with a PDF file as well. Okay, so that works really well. Again, it's not. I don't see a way to alter the color, at least within the directions here. We could just try some kind of commonsensical approaches. And often what these short codes will do is if they see something that they don't recognize, they'll just ignore it. So we'll try putting that in quotes or double quotes. And then we'll try, oftentimes the main codes will render just fine, but we'll try a hex code as well. And if this doesn't work, just as a final kind of why not try it, we will try capitalization. Normally within hex codes that doesn't matter. R is case sensitive, but within the specifications that we've been using, hex codes, I've never run into a situation where there was a hex code that had case sensitivity. So it's insensitive to case using hex codes. So it looks to me like this grabs font awesome icons fine. The title kind of addition, I do like that, where you can hover your cursor and get a little more information. on it. So we can even say title. This is a crown. I don't know why, but I really do like that. Now the EM specification, uh, we could play with our fonts and the size of our fonts for the document, and then these should respond relative to the size of the main font. But as we have 13 minutes here in our hour, I think what I would like to do instead is to show you an alternative, and the older alternative that to me has more user control. Um, and it should work just fine within Quarto files. So that alternative is through a package called Font Awesome. A package called Font Awesome, not a extension called Font Awesome. Before we do that, let's try our different document types. Now it looks to me like the sizing is probably not going to work. We know the title's not going to work because it's a PDF document, but look, I'm guessing that the sizing is not going to work either. We'll see if it throws us any fits or if it gives us something. While we wait for our PDF, let's see, do we have any... It's an oldie, but maybe not a goodie. I don't know. Here's an oldie.
Here's my brother Jake. He's gonna be staying with me for a few weeks.
Okay.
And it's still thinking, so there's something here that it doesn't like. It might be trying to resolve some of these size specifications. So if it thinks much longer, I'm probably gonna abort this, and we'll come back and have a less elaborately specified short code. But in the absence of that, what else do we have here? I guess you'd call that failure to launch. The audio on that wasn't great, was it? So I may need to turn that down a little bit. Here's a frustration. As we're waiting with the frustration, we can have a frustration. So what's happening here is the LaTeX specification is trying to, and by the way, this process has gotten a lot smoother over the course of my 10 some years of trying to generate these sorts of documents. Whatever internal logic the package manager is using for RStudio here, it is fantastic. You get far fewer just kind of, nope, I ain't gonna do that situations. That rendered just fine. I mean, it took a long time. The second time should be faster because now it knows what it needs. But it rendered just the same. So that's actually really nice. Reveal.js, there's no reason for that not to work. We'll do one just quick. This should recognize the sizings. We already know that color is not going to come through. So the sizings there look fine. And then the type that probably is not going to be supported because it's not explicit on the extension page in terms of capabilities is a typist file type. So here we're expecting just nothing to be rendered, and that's what I would expect. If we look at the background jobs, there may be some specification here in terms of, oops, I didn't recognize that. If not, the way to debug that is to say, you want to keep the file that's used to generate the PDF, and that's a TYP type file. Because if we look now in our list of files, we're going to have the source typist information, and in here somewhere, you would need to know typist or need to interact with an AI that is helpful. But there's 400 and some lines of code in there. That's where we would focus our debugging if we wanted to see what's going on there with how it's interpreting that stuff. Okay, so let's look at the other alternative. The other alternative is a R package, and if this weekly session is focused on R, the language, to me there's not a big reason to pursue this extension if we could just, if we're using our packages anyway to generate plots and to manipulate and tidy our data, like why not just have one for access to those icons? And so that's called Font Awesome R package. Let's look for it. I was just here this week, so as I was preparing this week's slides, you can see that these hyperlinks have been visited. That's from me actually looking at them this week. But if we look at some of the, and by the way, if you're not used to reading package documentation as an R user, this is something that, again, there's a steep learning curve, but there is standardization here, and you do develop some comfort and ability to interpret and get through these. The function that we want is just FA, and so FA is going to give us access to those Font Awesome icons. But you can see here many different user parameters, including things like fill. And fill, not PHIL fill, but FILL fill, will allow us to specify the color of the icon. And to me, that's almost a game changer. You could also have size in here. So the size, where's size? I guess it's height and width. Now the height and width, my recollection of Font Awesome is those should, one of those should be sufficient. Unless you wanted to skew the icon, there shouldn't be any need to specify both. The image should render in a appropriate aspect ratio. Same thing, we just went through that with the callout PNG package as well. So there's only one parameter. You only play with height because the image is going to scale relative to that. That should be the same thing that happens here. Okay, so if I want to use that, I'm going to, in our studio, I'm going to go to packages. I'm going to look for an install, and I believe this is on CRAN. Yep, we just saw the documentation, so of course it's on CRAN. I'll go ahead and reinstall it. I already have it, but it's a smaller package. There's no harm in actually doing that. And now I should have access to it, so I can, if I want to, early in the document, I can put a code chunk in here and say, load the library. Font Awesome. I can do that if I want, but I usually don't do that. So what that does is when we're doing inline code, so the way we're going to access those is I'm going to write my document, lorem ipsum, and about that GitHub crown. And then I'm going to put in just wherever in my document I want to access that, I'm going to put in some inline code. So inline code is tick R. And then what I usually do is I use that double colon convention. So Font Awesome, double colon, and then the function is FA. And then I'm going to call out the actual, we're going to call out the actual icon itself. Now, I don't remember if this is in quotes or double quotes or not. I'm guessing it probably is. We can look at the documentation and see, but let's just do a quick rendering and see if that grabs anything. There it is. So within double quotes, you can see, I mean, you can start to see where that, like, what do I need? What do I need the extension for if I'm able to do that using inline R code, which is pretty quick and easy. Now, if I wanted to use that same inline R code here, and I can just swap out GitHub for web, for what is it called? Web Awesome. Now, the one difference is there is a specification of where the icon resides within the Font Awesome repository using the Quarto extension shortcode. So you're seeing brands here. Now, I did not need to specify brands using the Font Awesome R package when I accessed GitHub. I'm not sure if we're going to have to dig deeper for this one or not. We may have to, but we can just try it you can just try it and see what happens here. Now this should run. This should work equally well for. There it is. I mean, just easy specification. This should work equally well for PDFs as well. I believe this should work. This may actually work in typist documents as well. But we'll check that out. Let's play with some of these parameters, since the reason we're here is we might want to alter that. So the fill we can change into, we'll try our channel color here, which is kind of a chartreuse. But we don't really like chartreuse. We just like to specify it saying badass. So to me, that's a game changer. I don't know. At least from what we saw, I didn't see an explicit articulation that color is something you can specify with these font awesome icons. What the heck was that? Did you hear that? I got a weird binging here. Color isn't something that we can specify with these font awesome icons. Sorry, I got something weird going on here. But color is not something that I know we can specify. We should be able to specify size quite similarly. So let's actually, where am I? I got too many things open, per usual. Per usual. So we're going to go font awesome R package again. And maybe instead of going to the R package documentation that's located on CRAN, let's look at the documentation that the package authors put together, which looks a little more helpful in this particular case. Code of conduct. As a professor, I never read our code of conduct, and I'm not going to start now with fonts or with icons. Why start now if I didn't do it then? Okay, so there's a little more specification of the ways in which you can call these out. That's nice. I like that. What I'm looking for is I'm looking for some examples. Oh, this is super cool. So you can create a PNG version of a font awesome icon, which means that you can use icons. You can use any of these icons within the PNG callout package. That would be a way to do it. Change log, we're not going to want to know, other than it looks like it's still active as of probably a couple years ago. Okay, so let's look for the size specification. We probably are going to have to look at the documentation from the CRAN page, unless this page gives us something a little different. So at least we have fill there. Again, F-I-L-L, not P-H-I-L-L. Okay, there are some, they're all the same. Why would you do all the same? Yes, I see that. I'm interested in size. So I want to do a sizing, because I think sizing would be super cool. Yeah, one of the applications that you may be tempted to use this in is dashboards. So dashboards, here you can see a car icon put up with manufacturer transmission cylinder. Oftentimes on dashboards and websites, you'll see Twitter and Facebook and GitHub and those sorts of icons in the upper right. Those may come from Font Awesome. Those may come from a different location. Where's my size specification, you people? Come on. Come on, people. Help me out here. I know it's here somewhere. View on CRAN. Let's see if we can go back to the reference manual. Height. I'm sorry. It was height. So height and width. It looks like 1M is the default. It looks like it's going to take EM, and EM is kind of the unit that I've grown to appreciate as well. I don't know explicitly that this is what it stands for, but I interpret it as enlargement magnification. So we'll just build this out a little bit within our FA specification and see if we can get that badass crown a little high, a little bigger. Now that, yes, that's super easy. Okay, why not? So yeah, I'm not using the extension. I'm using the old package. The old package is operating just great. It's operating fine. Um, we can do that here as well. We don't need to do that, do we? I don't. There's all kinds of things you can. What else can we do to this? Let's look for. There's so much user specification you can have here. This really, to me, um, again, is a strong reason just to stay within. As long as you're an R user, just stay within the package ecosystem and just use this and not the extension. And again, nothing against the extension authors. I think it's great that it's out there, but having this capability already existing, I think I would probably just prefer to fill back on this. Uh, I know that you can have some hollowing of some of these images, and that might be something we're interested in. Absent that, let's just look for a cool icon and see if we can. Let's see if we can get an R icon in there. Now they should have R, the language, in here. There it is, R project. So it looks like it's just R dash project. And again, you need a little familiarity with that the way that they label things in terms of how they're going to transfer over to your specification. But this is going to be true if you use the Quarto extension or if you use the package. So it looks like R dash project. So we'll do one more down here. And actually, we can do it as a header because that it is kind of neat to see how that renders just different sizes depending on heading specification. So we should give it the color of R, or at least something close to the color of R. So I'm going to go for a hex color picker. And we'll look for blue and we'll say, there it is. That's the R we want. Again, I don't know if it's a limitation or if it's a good thing, but these icons that you're grabbing from Font Awesome, they are all going to be monochromatic. So to me, for something like this, that's not a huge deal. That to me looks nice. But if you want to be kind of a stickler on it looking like what the actual icon in use looks like, you might want to consider an icon from a different source or just an image. And so I, I, I like that Iconify repository, partially because of that. So it's tough to see here. There are differences in sizing, but because they're so graduated from 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 to 5, they're kind of difficult to see. If I got rid of these 2 to 4 and we just did 1 next to 5, you would be able to see the kind of native sizing difference that we have there. And then the last thing that I think we'll do, because we know that sizing was non-operative within a PDF using the extension, let's go ahead and render this. Let's render this as a PDF and see if the sizing is operative within a PDF using the R package specification. So we might need some entertainment here while we're waiting for this. I'll wait until it goes to the package manager. When that package manager shows up, that's kind of the indication that this may take a little longer than we planned for. Let's see, what else do we have here? Oh, there it goes. Did it? It's hard for me. Oh, it did. Yeah, it did. Oh, all right. To me, that's a no-brainer then. I don't see why. I don't see a reason to use the extension when the R package specification, it allows both color specification as well as size, and the color and size specification syntax are the same across HTML and PDF specifications. Because the syntax, even though that there is a capability of altering the icon size within a PDF, the way in which you script it, it looked to me like the way in which you script it needs to be aware of that, and you need to consider that. For the R package, it doesn't matter. If you later decide that you want to do a PDF, whereas initially you're doing an HTML document, it really doesn't matter. So, I mean, and if it gives us anything with typists, then it's even more of a no-brainer beyond no-brainers that we would, yeah, okay, that's not that surprising. So both of them are supported in both PDF and HTML, but not yet, at least within these typist document types. But I'm really impressed with Font Awesome as a R package. And I'm glad we looked at it, because now if I want to revisit the use of those specific icons, I know that the way in which I'm going to do that is not through the package, but I am going to do it through the I'm sorry, not through the extension, but I am going to do it through the package. And again, uh, it's important to note that the people that are using these processes to script documents, they're not all using R. As a matter of fact, the majority may not be using R. I'm guessing the majority are not using R. Um, and so that package or a similar package in a different language, for example, as a Python package, may not may not be something that exists. So the fact that we are our users and we have access to this package, that's super cool. So I'm going to keep using that, but I'm glad we looked at the extension. And again, just the process of going through and making an extension, it's very informative. And I'm glad that whoever put that together did it, just for the fact of putting it together and doing it and learning how to do it, because I think that's super cool and super neat. And you learn a lot doing that. Okay, thanks everybody. If there is something that somebody would like to see for next week's session, drop me a note and let me know. Otherwise, I'll probably find something. I did have one request for some AI kind of AI integration stuff, but I'm gonna have to wait on that until until my number of allowed queries resets into next month. So that won't be next week's session. So if there's something out there that you're interested in seeing, drop me a note, let me know. Otherwise, everybody have a good week.